And welcome to class. We are glad to have you in class this period. It may be morning or afternoon or evening from where you are, but the thing is that we want to again welcome you to this session as we discuss agricultural communication. First of all, basically when we discuss communication, we know that we communicate not by what we see, but by what listeners understand. We communicate not by what we intend to say, but by what listeners see, hear, and are willing to accept. We communicate not by what we say, but by what listeners hear. So, welcome to class as we discuss agricultural communication. At the end of this class, we expect that everyone in this class should be able to introduce agricultural communication to novice, to individuals who are new to this concept. We expect that what you learn here will be able to equip you to address issues relating to agricultural communication, diverse forms of agricultural communication, the details of what is required in agricultural communication. Also, this session should be able to equip you with the capacity to identify the problems with communicating with rural people, the challenges of communicating with ruralites. There are a lot of issues that you see when you try to reach out to the rural people. Agricultural extension is all about the farmer majorly and his household and how to improve his household and living standard. So there are issues that come up in the course of this. So in this class, we'll be able to address those challenges, identify those challenges, so that as an extension communicator, you'll be able to also look ahead of time and know how to handle those issues. Then we'll be able to describe effective communication. What is effective communication? What does it imply? What are the elements of effective communication? So welcome to class. Then finally, we should be able to profile ineffective communication. When do we say communication is ineffective? These are key points that will help you to assess yourself at the end of this class to be very sure that you've learned the things that you ought to learn. If you can't answer these questions reasonably, it means there is still a gap that is to be filled up. Let's go to the next topic now as we discuss issues around agricultural communication. You must have heard about communication before now, but now we are trying to introduce you to agricultural communication. So we agree that there is a widening gap between research findings and then the possible outcomes from farmers' field. Over time, we've seen many factors affecting the results that farmers get from their farm when we compare that with what you see from research institutes from expected outcome. So that's what has necessitated this idea of agricultural communication. So what is agricultural communication? Basically, agricultural communication is the transfer of information, ideas, messages, agricultural concepts from extension agents to farmers. Now, the extension agents here are not usually the source, but then the core source of these new innovations that are to be transferred comes from the innovation incubation centers. We've discussed innovation incubation centers to include universities, agricultural research institutes, and other technological development centers that are playing active role in agriculture. So when we transfer ideas, when we make a conscious attempt to share information and ideas with farmers, then that is agricultural communication. We can say that agricultural communication is the transmission of information with the purpose of influencing the farmer. It is the process by which messages are transferred from the research institutes through the extension officer or other active players in the agricultural system to the receiver. The receiver here is the farmer. The farmer is the receiver here. When we look at it with a closer view, we can say that agricultural communication is a process by which two or more people exchange ideas, facts, feelings, impressions in ways that each can gain clear understanding of the meaning, intent, and use of these messages. So we've clearly seen that agricultural communication involves transfer of information. You have to establish that, and that the transfer comes from a source to a receiver. I hope that is very clear to each and every one of us, and that the purpose of the transfer is to bring about a change in behavior, a change in skill, a change in attitude. That's what agricultural communication seeks to do: bring about a change in behavior, change in skill, change in attitude. Let's go ahead as we look at the challenges with communicating with rural people. Given that extension is majorly targeting farmers, you can be sure that there will be a lot of challenges, communicating with farmers. These challenges would include credibility gap. Sometimes when the farmer is not getting the exact result in line with the promises of the extension agent, in line with the promises of government, in line with the promises of the research institutes, if results differ from what the extension agent must have told the farmer will find it difficult to trust the extension agent, trust the innovation, and that makes it difficult for them to accept whatever new information we are bringing. So that's the problem. That's the problem. And one of the reasons why we've experienced credibility gap could be pointed to the increasing rate of climate change, which has made it difficult, for you to predict the weather. Innovations now come under various forms of weather conditions that we are not factored in at the point of their incubation. Another challenge is the conflict among development partners. Agricultural development programs involve several partners. It's not a one-man thing. A lot of agencies are involved, and sometimes you see that one development partner may want to do one thing and the other person want to do something different. At such points, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for extension to communicate effectively with the farmer. It becomes very difficult since the development partners are not working in line, together to achieve the same goal. So when that happens, it becomes a problem to communicate with the rural people. Then there is the case of impatience on the side of the extension agents. There is a case of impatience on the side of the extension agents. Here we are actually saying that the extension agents may want to get results quickly, get their messages through, and as quickly as possible. The result is instant resistance from the audience, and they shut the door to further communication because enough patience has not been exercised in trying to effect a change of outlook in the people. The role of the educator is not to fill the students with knowledge, technical or otherwise. It is rather to attempt to move towards a new way of thinking in both the educator and the student through a dialogue, through information sharing between both. So it's important that extension be patient, be very patient with the clientele, because when extension is not patient with the clientele, it becomes difficult to communicate with them. Then there's confusion between informative and communication and organized publicity. Recently in Nigeria, most farmers have heard about such things as subsidized fertilizer, low price tractor services, and then generous agricultural loans. But information on steps to take in order to obtain all the various government support is hardly available in the rural areas. So you see farmers being informed on the existence of certain privileges for agricultural production, but the details of the steps to take seem to be missing. So that's also a challenge in communicating with rural people. And then we also need to go back again to look at the challenges arising from noise. Effective communication is important in agriculture. Now, when is communication said to be effective? When is communication said to be effective? Recall that earlier we have defined agricultural communication as the effective transfer of agricultural technology innovation from technology developers, example, research institutes, universities, private organizations, to technology utilizers, that is the farmer. So in a broad sense, agricultural communication is the identification and utilization of appropriate expertise in the development process that will assist in increasing participation of the intended beneficiaries at the grassroots level. Now, when is communication said to be effective? But it's good that we establish that communication can be effective or ineffective. Now, effective communication requires a skillful communicator sending a useful message through the proper channels, effectively treated to an appropriate audience to elicit the desired response. In discussing this, it's important that we emphasize the term fidelity. The term fidelity. That fidelity means the faithful performance of the communication process. This implies that the effectiveness of each of the communication elements is synchronized to produce the desired effect. So let me just say, to the level it will be easier for you to understand that communication is said to be effective if the message successfully brings about the desired expectation of the sender. If the attitude, skill, behavior of the receiver brings about that which the sender is expecting, then communication is effective. For instance, it's common here for people to say, you tell someone, come, and then instead of turning to come, the person keeps going to where he's going and then says, I am coming. Within that context, communication is not effective because there is no change in behavior or attitude or skill of the receiver in line with the expectation of the sender. I hope this is very clear. Requirements for effective communication is part of what we have discussed, that the source must be skilled enough to understand the needs of the receiver. The message must be sent through the appropriate channel. Then the receiver must be able to decode the message. The receiver must be able to implement the message and then return a feedback to the sender. So these are the major requirements for effective communication. Then ineffective communication is also there, of course, when the message does not get the expected outcome. When the message does not yield the expected outcome, then the communication is said to be ineffective.